This is the Georgia Farm Monitor. Since 1966, your source for state and national agribusiness news, and features for farmers and consumers about Georgia's #1 industry, agriculture. The Georgia Farm Monitor is produced by the state's largest general farm organization, the Georgia Farm Bureau. Now, here are your hosts, Ray DeLisio and Kenny Bergamy.
Yeah, still going strong after 51 years. This is the Georgia Farm Monitor. As you see, no Kenny this week. He is on assignment, so you were stuck with me for the next half hour. And as always, we have got a great show for you. Straight ahead, the amazing comeback story of the bald eagle and the efforts being done to make sure they continue to thrive here in Georgia. It's a story you don't want to miss. Also in the program, the always fascinating dinosaurs of the water, talking about the American alligator. We're going to hear from researchers at Clemson University about their ongoing study and some things you may not have known about the creatures. And then later, the Monitor revisits a popular agritourism destination. A lot has changed since our last visit to the Rock Ranch. We'll show you some of the new features and why it's important to know if you're a Georgia Farm Bureau member. These stories and so much more starting right now on the Georgia Farm Monitor. In case you haven't noticed, bald eagles are now everywhere in Georgia, and eagle cams like the one at Berry College are becoming more and more popular every day. In a recent study, the Georgia Department of Natural Resources found that for the third straight year, the number of active nests exceeded the 200 mark, with each nest producing on average around 3 eaglets. An amazing comeback when you consider that as recently as 1970, there were no active nests in Georgia, and the bald eagle was on the endangered species list. So what changed? Why are bald eagles now thriving in Georgia, and how did they land on the endangered list in the first place? These are questions we posed to Georgia DNR expert Pete Griffin during a recent Wildlife Day at the Newton County Tax Commissioner's office.
The biggest thing is our national bird, and this bird was almost extinct. And the reason is because several different things. One of them was attributed to DDT, and it's a chemical sprayed on crops to get rid of bugs. And so when the rains would come and it would wash that DDT off and into the water, fish would absorb it. And eagles love to eat fish. And then they would absorb it. And when the eggshells, when they became so thin, when mom went to lay them, they'd crack wide open. So we were losing them rapidly. So we outlawed DDT. We protected them under amendments. And we did it so well that they have come back tremendously.
I think they're so beautiful, and they're such a wonderful natural resource, and it's so wonderful that they're our national bird, and it's just really important that we protect all of our natural resources, but the eagle in particular really seems to grab people's hearts.
With the largest nest of any bird in North America, a bald eagle is somewhat of a master architect. Their nests typically measure up to 13 feet deep and over 8 feet wide, and believe it or not, weigh more than a ton. Another interesting fact is that bald eagles choose a mate for life, and each year the pair returns to that very same nest. But ensuring those nests stay protected and that the eagles continue to thrive remains an ongoing process.
You can help the eagle and other natural species in Georgia, your natural resources right here in Georgia. You can help those animals through the purchase of a wildlife tag. And our wildlife tags are not only the cheapest specialty plates in Georgia, but we also actually get that money to go where it's needed. So for a wildlife plate, it's only $25 extra a year to upgrade. And every time you pay that $25, 80% of your $25 comes right back to DNR, and we put it into wildlife programs. So you're directly supporting the species such as the eagle, the hummingbird, etc.
One of the things we have that we do, we have hacking programs where we actually raise them. At different sites we'll raise the babies, sometimes using a puppet. They don't see us at all. It's not a good thing for them to attribute us with food or to get used to us. So we use a puppet, and by doing that, when it's time for them to fledge or leave, if they see a human, they're out of there. They don't want anything to do with us. So it's a very unique type of a setup, but it's a neat thing that we've got going on all over the state. In a perfect world, they could live about 35 to 40 years, but it's not a perfect world. People will shoot them. People actually will poison them. One of the biggest things is habitat fragmentation. When they tear up the habitat, they have no place to live. They have no place to breed or to feed, sure. And that's a big problem that we're facing with that.
Yeah, just an amazing animal to see in person. Let's hope their comeback story continues. Now, according to the Georgia DNR, bald eagles return to their nesting territories in late summer or early fall and usually have eggs by December. The eggs hatch about a month after being laid, and the young leave the nest about 12 weeks later, typically in late March or April. Well, of course, the ag industry has seen a number of technological advances over the past few decades with things like the introduction of computers, monitoring systems, and GPS, just to name a few. Many of those are on full display at one business that grows produce without even getting their hands dirty. Damon Jones explains.
Walk through your local grocery store or farmer's market and you'll be met with a variety of different fruits and vegetables that probably started off like this. However, through science and modern technology, Grant Anderson of Better Fresh Farms can grow any of this produce without even stepping foot in the field. It's a process called hydroponics.
Just basically means you grow in a soilless environment. We use a nutrient-rich water to supply our plants with the nutrients they need to grow. And in this system, artificial lighting.
Packed into 2 double-wide trailers are sensors, monitoring systems, and climate controls, which allow the farmer to adjust growing environment for the plants. That means no matter the weather outside, any type of crop can be produced at any time of year.
It's a controlled environment. We manage all the aspects of growth of our plants, so it gives you the ability to really produce whatever you'd like to produce, what's most conducive for your market. So we can change our mix of crops at any point in time. It's just adjustments to the conditions inside of the containers.
Being able to control the environment also has the obvious benefit of eliminating the unpredictability of Mother Nature.
You take a lot of the questions that the natural environment introduces for your crops out of the equation. You don't have the weather concerns, you don't quite have the pest concerns, you don't have to worry about the applications that it takes to keep your plants healthy. Basically, it produces a perfect environment where you eliminate a lot of those issues you would have to combat in a soil farming environment.
However, creating these growing conditions takes plenty of hard work as they must be monitored and adjusted on a constant basis.
We actually have an app that's attached to a computer in the container that feeds us information about what's going on in these systems at all times. Part of that is because you need to know what's going on at all times to ensure the plants are in the most favorable environment. There are a wide variety of factors that influence how our plants grow and whether or not they're healthy. So it's pretty much an around-the-clock process, monitoring and managing the conditions.
With so much being produced on such a small plot of land, Anderson really sees this as farming of the future, with food demands constantly on the rise.
This day and age, we're getting to a point where the food supply chain as it exists is not going to be able to handle population growth. Over time, there will be a greater need for local food sources, and being in a situation where you can grow fresh food that doesn't have to be sprayed with herbicides and pesticides, that isn't shipped across the country to get to you, that can actually last in your fridge, that is fresh and local. Those are all really valuable things, and having equipment that can perform in that way, I believe, is not only a smart way to actually function as a business, but it gives you something really valuable to offer to your local community.
Reporting from Effingham County, I'm Damon Jones for the Georgia Farm Monitor.
Damon, thank you so much. Time to pay some bills. When we come back, a study 35 years in the making, uncovering the many myths and mysteries about the growth and reproduction of the American alligator. Stay tuned. For 35 years, scientists have studied American alligators at Tom Yawkey Wildlife Center in Georgetown, South Carolina. It's a protected habitat that offers researchers a unique view of these mysterious reptiles. Well, thanks to our friends at Clemson University Extension, we now get to see how their findings in a one-of-a-kind study stemming more than 3 decades shatters conventional scientific understanding about the growth and reproduction of the American alligator.
Kind of a dogma has been for years that crocodilians, reptiles in general, exhibit indeterminate growth. They grow until they die. Until this recent study, we have about 35 years worth of data to conclude that, at least at our site, animals do stop growing. We have animals that Phil first caught and tagged back in 1981 that we caught again last year, 2015, 2016, that still are still the same exact length they were 35 years ago or so. But one of the kind of the interesting things we found on the side was that, again, one of the older dogmas was that in crocodilians or alligators maybe, that the middle-aged females, the ones in the kind of the prime of their lives, create the largest clutches, which is the most number of eggs laid in a nest, and those eggs have the highest fertility as compared to the newer females that are just starting out and the older females that are kind of going offline, so to speak. But what we found is that we have females we know that are probably in their 60s that are probably pushing 70 years old that are still nesting, and they have large clutches of very fertile eggs. And so either that dogma is wrong, or that, you know, middle age is somewhere in the 60s and 70s. One of the most unique things about the Yawkey study is the longevity of it. No other place has a data set this robust and this long term. The center is a really unique place to work on alligators for a few reasons. One is it's a population that's been unhunted for almost 100 years, so the population is relatively pristine in terms of harassment by human beings. Number two, the site itself is bordering on the northern limit of the alligator's distribution, so it's kind of a northern part of the range. Not much is known about alligators in this northern climate, and even though it's, you know, just a few hours drive from here to Georgia or Florida, the climate is a little bit different, and it can affect things like behavior and growth in alligators. And thirdly, and most importantly, is we have a long-term data set on alligators at this site. Phil Wilkinson, who worked here in the late 70s up until today, has created a database of alligator biology, growth, nesting, and so forth that's unparalleled anywhere in the world, to my knowledge. And so it allows us to look at things that most other folks that study crocodilians can't look at, including things like growth and aging, so it's very unique.
Nobody had a growth curve on alligators, period. We had been working with alligators here and catching them in the late 70s and early 80s. Now we've got animals that we know that they got to a certain size and they never got any bigger, just like me. I might get fatter, but I don't, and they do that too, but they don't get any taller or longer. The real beginning of usefulness for this business was that first growth study. And we got you know, graphs that showed at a certain size, a mean size, animals on this area will be a certain age. By having that information, we could go forward and capture animals at nest sites and come up with some, when we had recaptures, have some idea of how old she was. And so we're looking at how long they can reproduce in their lifetime. That's one thing. Whether they, as they get older, does their reproduction diminish in quantity or quality or anything like that? And so far, we're not seeing any sign much of that at all. We're seeing old animals putting out the same number of eggs, and they're just as viable as the ones they had when they were younger. So I think I kind of like to think of them as being like a big old oak tree. They drop acorns every so often when the weather's right, and one day they don't, and that's the end of it.
It's always real pleasing to me when we mark one of these guys and find him 15 or 20 or 30 years later, 29 years, one of them.
Nowhere else in the United States has a data set quite like this. And what that long-term marked population has allowed us to do is piggyback onto that with other research projects using the same animals for various other things, all the way from toxicology to nesting ecology to movement and growth rates. So there's a wide variety of things that have used this data set of alligators. Based on research done here over the years by DNR biologists and by Clemson University researchers, it's allowed us to look at numerous things that we do with our management on a daily basis, how our water level management in the ponds affects alligator movement, how does drought affect where alligators nest each year. There's a whole variety of things that can be drawn from this data. A lot of it hasn't been processed yet, but eventually it'll give us a bigger picture idea of these movements. For instance, one project that's using satellite telemetry on alligators here done through Clemson University, it's showing us, are our areas big enough refuges to protect these animals? Are they moving off and on the property and are available to hunters in the outside? So that's just one example of how these can be used in our management techniques.
The fortunate thing is the information that we generated from that can be used for conservation purposes. For example, we have students in South Carolina now at Clemson University, in fact, doing research on alligator population biology, how to estimate populations in South Carolina specifically. And she can use the data we have on growth and on longevity for her population models, help her determine detectability of animals in the wild, help her determine how long animals are in the population, a variety of things that which can then be turned over to DNR and other management agencies to help them make more informed decisions about how to conserve their species.
Pretty neat stuff. Meantime, the concept of fake news, it's been getting a lot of attention over the past few months. In agriculture, beef producers know firsthand what it's like to see and hear misleading information about what they do in raising cattle and about the role of beef in the diet. However, as Brian Baxter reports from Texas, through the beef checkoff, the industry is fighting misinformation with facts.
In South Texas, Stephen Maffridge is carrying on a family tradition raising Brayford and Brahman cattle on the Y-Bar Ranch, which was founded in 1883. And as a fourth-generation cattle producer, Maffridge sees a bright future in producing beef.
I'm optimistic about the beef industry for, simple reason that supply and demand. I think the U.S. does an outstanding job of raising a safe, wholesome product. It's a good product and the consumer wants it.
Although consumers clearly do want beef, there are still frequent threats to consumer demand in the form of misleading or incorrect information about the health benefits and safety of beef. It's an ongoing threat that Maffridge believes is best met by producers working together through the Beef Checkoff program.
I think the Beef Checkoff is a huge plus to the beef industry because it seems like whatever happens in the world today, whatever you're trying to produce, whether you're producing something, raising something, or just building something, there's opposition. For whatever reason, you meet opposition. And we have to have sound science to protect our product. We have to educate the consumer, and without the Beef Checkoff, there's no funding for that to happen.
There are several Beef Checkoff-funded websites and programs that reach consumers every day with facts about beef nutrition and safety and about the way producers care for their cattle and the environment. And for Maffridge, perhaps most important is the effort to monitor and correct false information about beef.
Things are already in place that will help the producer and help protect our industry. We're raising a sustainable product and we're proud of it, and then when somebody gives an inaccurate comment about it, it's very hard, especially when you're down here, to do something about it. So knowing that the Beef Checkoff that's set up with the media outlets that are in place and a whole system in place to disperse anything like that makes it easier to sleep at night.
On the Y-Bar Ranch in South Texas, I'm Brian Baxter reporting.
All right, who's hungry for some raccoon, beaver, or maybe some grilled possum? Sounds appetizing, right? Well, when we come back, Charles Denny takes us to Beast Feast, where the main entrees are a bit out of the ordinary.
They're firing up the grills on the UT Ag campus, but not a hot dog in sight. You'll find burgers, but venison, not beef. Suffice it to say, this cookout was no vegetarian delight.
What do you got there? They're goose poppers. It's goose wrapped in bacon.
Welcome to Beast Feast, the unofficial name for the annual wild game dinner prepared by wildlife and fishery students at UT's Institute of Agriculture. On the menu,
13 deer, 15 raccoons, 13 beavers, 6 pigs, I think somewhere around 25 squirrels, just a couple of possums, so if you get a possum, you're lucky this year.
Students like Joshua Alston hunted, trapped, and cooked supper, a meal Davy Crockett might have enjoyed in centuries past.
2017 marks the 48th year for Beast Feast. The money raised here goes to UT's Wildlife and Fisheries Society. That's a student organization that goes on to compete in sort of the SEC championship of wildlife programs.
This past year, UT took 3rd place overall, and the year before we actually took 1st overall throughout the entire Southeast in conclave.
Once the meats were cooked, the doors opened and hundreds of people lined up. For a $10 donation, folks can sample lots of different dishes.
Yeah, the students work really hard to put all of this together, and some of them even pull all-nighters and show up really early in the morning or show up at midnight to make all of this happen and bring it together. And it is really impressive because they're using local meats and sustainably harvested and hunted meats to feed the community.
After about an hour, pretty much every bite of wild game had been consumed by hungry humans. Students say they're already planning and hunting for next year's dinner. So bring your appetite for an evening of hearty eating that supports student activities and serves as a throwback to earlier times when meat and protein lived wild in the woods. This is Charles Denny reporting.
Thank you, Charles. Discounts, discounts, and more discounts. One of the many perks of being a Georgia Farm Bureau member. Best of all, annual membership dues only $25, and membership is open to everyone. You don't need to be a farmer or have insurance with us to join Farm Bureau. For more information and other benefits of becoming a member, just log on to gfb.org and head on over to the membership section. Now, speaking of member benefits, Georgia Farm Bureau is pleased to announce the launch of a new member benefit program partnering with The Rock Ranch, which is about 7 miles from Thomaston, Georgia. Founded by the late Truett Cathy of Chick-fil-A, The Rock, as some like to call it, is a 1,500-acre working cattle ranch with more than 35 fun rides and attractions. Now, we last featured The Rock here on the Monitor back in 2012, but during our recent visit, we found that much has changed, including some staff members.
Coming to work here every day, there's never the same moment twice. So I'll come in some days and I'll get to go play with the goats in farmland, or some days I'll be at my computer working hard on social media, sending out press releases and things like that. It's definitely an awesome place to work, and there's never a dull moment here. In the last 5 years, I guess, we've had the new farm stay houses that we've opened. The largest house is going to have 4 bedrooms, and the smallest house has 2 bedrooms. They range in price from $295 to $185, and the houses are Southern living style. They're really great for families. There's no TVs in the home, so it's just good quality time. We have board games and things like that for kids to play, and then we have a grill outside. There's a house that's actually on a pond, so you can fish on the pond while you're there. You can also do campfires with a big fire pit outside, and the families that come and stay at the farm stays are provided with wood and all the basic utensils that you'd need in a house, similar to an Airbnb or a home away kind of stay.
Yeah, so for the small groups, where there's 15 and 20 people, I can pretty much plan your perfect retreat. You can come to the farm, you can spend all day long, 2 days, up in one of our little small rooms in Truett's barn, and you can just kind of have your perfect session of whether it's planning your next year, figuring out what you're going to do, and then you can have us cater all your meals. You can have a working lunch, working dinner. We can have a dinner out there on the farm for you. We can mix in group development stuff, so if you want us to do a couple hours of you just having fun, learning how your team works better together, we can do that. We can mix in everything that you can dream of.
They can expect a good day of family fun. It doesn't matter if you're coming with a corporate event or if you're coming just to camp in the wagons. You know, if a group comes to our Up and Away Day and wants to come and do hot air balloon rides, they can do that. If someone wants to come to the farm market and just pick some strawberries and play on the playground, they can do that. There's something for really everybody when they come here.
Really fun place, and you can find more information about it by logging on to therockrancch.com. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but here's a reminder for all the latest ag info regarding food, great recipes, and what's happening down on the farm. Be sure and check out our Twitter, Facebook, and Pinterest pages. You'll stay informed and see what's up in the world of farming and the Farm Monitor Show. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week right here on the Georgia Farm Monitor.